You're not paid what you're worth, you're paid what you negotiate.
Welcome to the Hired Hop podcast, your ultimate guide to mastering the complexities of remote work and pushing your career forward.
Whether you're tuning in from the busy streets of Latin America or any corner of the globe, we're here to give you tools and insights to succeed in today's dynamic job market. I'm your host, Gabby Morales.
And I am your co-host, Jess Torres. If you're a recent graduate eager to leave your mark or a seasoned pro looking to redirect your career, you can join us as we explore the endless possibilities of remote work and career growth.
Get ready to unlock your full potential with the Hired Hub podcast. You know that only about 20% of people always negotiate their salary while 40% never do?
What? 40% of workers never negotiate their salary? That's not sustainable in any economy nowadays.
Yeah, and it's concerning not only due to the inflation, but I think it also affects people's perception of themselves and their worth.
Yeah, it actually reminds me of what Linda Babcock, a renowned economics academic, once said. You're not paid what you're worth, you're paid what you negotiate.
Exactly. Like, a lot of people think that businesses will always pay your worth. But if you're not willing to stand up for yourself, know your worth, and present that to others, you may wait years for top management to acknowledge it and reflect that in your pay.
So that's what we want to talk about in this episode of the Hired Hop. First is negotiating your salary, specifically in an international market. Second, overcoming the reluctance to negotiate. And third, negotiating after you've been hired. Have you ever negotiated your salary before, Gabby? I haven't. I have to admit it that I haven't done it before.
I have in several occasions. First time, I was so scared because, again, it's something very new. It was something very taboo in the place that I worked at. At the end, I didn't get it. I didn't get the raise that I had. In my defense, well, in the business's defense, I think I didn't make a strong case for myself. And then they were going through a tough patch, honestly. But eventually, it wasn't sustainable for me to stay in that job. So I eventually had to leave because I didn't see any improvements in my economical and professional career. I've heard this before, like if you don't earn or learn, then you're not doing anything there. So I met my roof, my top there, and then it was time for me to leave.
Yeah, sometimes you have to pick one or the other.
Exactly. Like when you're young, you really appreciate learning, which I think is very important. Again, when you lack experience, you need to learn. At least if you already know how to do the work, at least how to interact with people around you. So if that doesn't always include a good pay, well, you can still weather through it. But if there comes a moment that, pay is a very important part of in your satisfaction, then, and it's not the right moment for you, well, it's time to leave. But really just talking about, and it really just changed for me the moment that I started in the international market. I think that's a great way to start this conversation, like navigating international salary negotiations. Because like I said, for me, the way that I negotiated changed the moment that I entered the market. Like, Jess, what do you think are the biggest challenges for remote job seekers when negotiating salaries with international companies?
I think that one, it's a big challenge. It's the different salary expectations and benefits between regions. Sometimes international market variability influences offers based on regional norms. So that could vary. And many international businesses think it's enough to offer just an hourly pay as salary due to an economical instability in many Latin American countries nowadays. Yet international businesses that are smarter and seek more professional employees who stick around more time typically offer additional benefits like education that we were talking about, opportunities, paid time off, workplace, and I don't know, just shift flexibility. A lot of people look for that. So I just think that these additional benefits are known as emotional salaries, and they recognize and just value employees' emotions and needs. Like, I don't know, probably
Correct.
like waking up and having your dog there while you're working, that could be part of it, or just
Yeah, your emotional support pet. Absolutely.
that
It
counts.
would make a difference.
And just attracting professionals and COVID candidates that requires negotiating for these benefits. I also think this emotional salary, it's a big challenge, but it will definitely ensure that you will want to stay around where you're hired, and it will ground you more stability. A business that's also willing to provide more benefits to their staff also indicates that their commitment to this employee satisfaction, well-being, growth. It's like it makes you feel, hey, I'm valued. I am in a safe place. I am where people know that they know my worth. And it also shows that the business's mindset it towards their own growth and stability and just creating a positive workspace. But Gavi, do you feel that international employers sometimes undervalue workers from Latin America? And if yes, how can job seekers handle this during negotiations?
Uh, that's a charged question. But yeah, overall, I do think that international agencies, they a lot of times, of course, why they're looking towards Latin America and other countries. They're looking for more professional yet cheaper labor. I mean, let's not lie to ourselves, and usually businesses, they can't lie for you. But I do think that they're not always purposeful. Like, they don't do it on purpose. I think that a lot of times agencies, like these businesses, work without understanding the cultural biases and understanding of the diverse Latin American cultures. Like, international businesses may mistakenly treat all Latin Americans countries as having similar work customs and benchmarks, which is very far from the truth, honestly. For example, I think it's common that, due to the economic instability that many countries face, a lot of people see as attractive enough the hourly pay, especially for candidates that are just starting to dip their toes in an international market. But for American businesses that's the bare minimum they can offer in a market like this. So it doesn't make a business as appealing as one that offers other benefits like education opportunities, like you mentioned, paid time off, workplace flexibility, and many other things. When it comes to like these companies that they undervalue, I feel like I said before, a lot of times we're all put in the same bag. But in reality is each country has different customs and benchmarks when it comes to work benefits and conditions. Like, a lot of times businesses believe it's a better policy to have remote international workforce aligned to their schedule and their conditions, though it isn't always so sustainable in time. Like, for me, I'm Venezuelan. I'm used to an 8-hour shift, and I like my 1 hour lunch break in between, and I don't work on weekends, and I value workplace flexibility and a very social and positive work environment. Those conditions may vary according to any region in Latin America. And though I do see similarities, since I've gotten the chance to work with people from many different places and being part of their recruitment processes, you do see clear differences when it comes to work cultures, especially in the places you're seeking are far from each other. Like, for example, I've seen that Argentinians or Chilean candidates, they tend to value more the workplace and shift flexibility. They don't appreciate that rigidness of completing your shift in 8 or 9 hours straight, though I do see them more willing to work more hours, more spread it throughout the day. So that's a clear difference. But in countries like Venezuela or Colombia or Panama, we tend to prefer and excel. We actually perform better in an 8-hour shift dynamic because labor laws in our countries don't allow us to work more than that time. And we know that once your shift is done, you can dedicate the rest of the day to yourself. And there are even geographical reasons as to why each country has different work customs. And that doesn't happen only in Latin America. In countries like and near Venezuela, we're also used to starting a work shift early in the morning because since we're close to the equator, we don't have significant time or season changes. So, which means that it usually dawns early regardless of the month. And if you start work at 7 or 8, you can expect to be free around 3 or 4. So then you actually do have the rest of the day for yourself to do other things that you might want to do. In Chile and Argentina, they're lower in the hemisphere and have drastic time and season changes. So usually they tend to start a little later in the day. In Argentina, lunch breaks can be super long,
Really?
but people work more hours in the day. In summer, they start around 10 a.m. so they can get the morning light. They take lunch breaks at 2, they come back at 4 or 5, and can work till 9 or 10 p.m. And that's something that for us, like, I don't know if it happens to you that you're from Colombia, but for me, I can't imagine starting to work at 10 a.m. and finishing at 10 p.m. I can't. Even if I have a 4-hour lunch break, I do not want to work.
Yeah, but because that means that you have to work really late. And for us, Latin American, for an instance, I'm really social. I have a lot of friends. Sometimes my friends have activities at night. So it's like, I want my night free.
Yeah, so that's what I say. Like, I feel like it's a big struggle to get to that point, and like, have that confidence and understand those differences. But you need to strive towards a place and a work condition that you are comfortable with. If you are being forced to work in an hourly, in a dynamic that you're not comfortable with, and that is not only related to the time frame or if it's hybrid or remote or presential, it can have to do with the tools you're using, with how people are supervising you. If you're not satisfied with those conditions, it's not a good situation for either the company or the employee, because it means that it's not going to last. Either you're not going to perform well and they're going to have to finish letting you go, or you're just not going to be satisfied and you're going to leave on your own. So like I was going back to what I was saying, because if you're interested in your people, they end up being interested in your business because they create commitment through the values that you share. Like if you find a common ground, if as an employer you can find a common ground on how your people are working and your people can feel comfortable, they will be more committed towards the work that they're doing and they will be more satisfied. So again, it's a win-win situation. But even if like how to handle that, you asked me before, like it's never a losing situation, because if you decide to negotiate, you may get exactly what you want, and that you're not losing there. But even if you don't get what you want, then you have a reality check about the intentions that the business has for you. They say no, they don't present like a plan, or they're just not interested in that conversation. I mean, I guess that you also have to be selective in the opportunities that you take. And if it's just not benefiting you, move on. Like that's still your professional career and your life that you're talking about. So if it doesn't make sense to be in a workplace that doesn't like grant you the opportunities that you're looking for. So just recapping there, like my tip for businesses would be having hiring teams that understand each region's customs and needs to adapt benefits and keep teams happy, and also to acknowledge that the interest in employees' well-being fosters commitment and shared values, which makes for longer lasting and happier employees. And then my tip for job seekers would be to be honest about your boundaries and vocal about working conditions that don't suit you. Like if it's just not right, be able to talk about it, be honest, because you might get exactly what you want in return. And then remember that many businesses are flexible and open to negotiating conditions that work for both parties. You also need to understand that if a company isn't willing to meet your needs, it might just not be the right fit for you. And lastly, like I said before, be selective in choosing opportunities that align with your professional career and personal life. If it's not the best opportunity, if you feel you're not going to learn too much, and if on top of that, it doesn't have the best benefits, maybe you should just let it roll. Maybe it's the right position for someone else. I remember like what you just said, you've never negotiated before in a previous. And I'd like to know, like, why do you think many people avoid negotiating their salaries during job interviews?
I really think that mainly it's fear of rejection, and also it's part of like lack of confidence, Gabby. That's what I think. People sometimes worry that negotiating will make them look greedy or that they might lose their job, you know? But really, negotiation is just part of the process. And it can be appealing to recruiters and businesses that seek critical thinking and persuasion in top management or more professional roles. Um, I was talking with a friend yesterday, and she was like, Jess, I was really happy of being at my last job because every 6 months they would increase my payment. And she was like, now and at this job that I have, I am glad because I'm learning, but I'm not getting that raise. So it's sometimes you have to die like yeah, like sacrifice one things for others. And I will dare to say that when you're being interviewed for an important role, it's actually expected by hiring teams for you to negotiate just by conveying and appealing an honest speech about yourself and thoroughly investigating how you can showcase your talents and skills and just that advantage that you will give the business that hires you. The conversation about salary, it's usually expected and will receive by hiring team. So I think that when you know your worth and that you know that the company is going to obtain something through your work, it's like, hey, let's probably it's not what you expect. Probably it's not what they're giving you, but let's meet in the middle sometimes. And just talking about that confidence, Gabby, what can remote workers do to build that confidence that they need to negotiate their salaries when they feel the initial offer it's underpaid?
Yeah, this actually reminds me of the conversation we had, I think, a couple of episodes back when we were talking about, that interview process. Like, what do you need? First of all, like, confidence comes from being prepared. So candidates should gather information on industry standards for your market and the international agencies market to know what your worth is in that middle ground. Because maybe in your market, you're looking at a certain price, but then again, if you look at where the company is coming from, you can see also the difference in price ranges. And maybe you can get to a middle point where it's a bit above the market range for you. But then again, if you're providing that value, if you're demonstrating that you are the right asset for that role, a lot of times businesses will be open. They will be open to negotiate the rate. So I would say that. Don't forget about the emotional salary, because like you've mentioned before, we already know why that's important. Don't only focus on the net income that you're going to get at the end of the month. Also, look into what benefits these people are giving you. Like, what are their things? How are you valuing my well-being? How are you taking care of your staff? How are you making sure they're not burnt out quickly? What other benefits are you granting me? Are you giving me education opportunities? What about my career plan? That's also part of negotiation. And a lot of times when you're in interviews, you just want to say yes because maybe you need the role, but then you're not looking well into the opportunity per se. You're not looking at everything that it has to offer. And like you said before, negotiation a lot of times is expected. A lot of times the hiring team will lowball you because they already know that they're expecting negotiation. So you're doing a disservice to yourself to not ask for that. Because usually it's like when you want to sell something for yourself, you have an old phone and you say, okay, I'm going to sell it at $50 because I know they're going to ask me for, a discount. So I'm going to say 50, and when they say, I'm going to leave it at 40. So the same thing happens here. People are already expecting that you're going to negotiate. So they're going to lowball you so that you can counter, you can give them a counter offer, and then they'll say yes. So I think that unavoidably it's a must. Like, you still need to be able to say, like, hey, how about around this price or about that price, but you have to put in some PTO or some days off or, more flexible schedule. Like, think about that too, because maybe you can sacrifice a lower, a higher income in exchange for more benefits. And that's also a good opportunity. And then something else that I would suggest is to practice the negotiation. Like, especially, like, you and I can talk later, Jess, but if you haven't negotiated before, just practice it out. Like, let me just see how I'm going to tell my boss that I need an increase. And then we can practice. Do it in front of the mirror, do it in front of other people. Like, prepare that pitch. Prepare that pitch so that you know that you can present your case and you can show value. You can demonstrate why you are an invaluable asset. And then another tip I would give is to don't stop looking for work, even if you are comfortable in the place that you are, because maybe you may get a very good offer, but it's not necessarily because of that. But you also need to be constantly updated about the worth that you have. So every time that you do a new course, or that you prepare yourself in something else and you add on to that CV, or while you're acquiring new experience, you need to know how that reflects in your worth, in your value, in your salary. Not your self-worth, because your self-worth is something different, but how that reflects in your economic value. So that will also always be a good angle to, like, base your argumentation on, hey, like, the market price for this kind of role and for the amount of responsibilities that I'm covering is this. So this is what I'm expecting. But again, it's about creating a good pitch. It's about creating a pitch so that you not only think about the value that you bring, but also the value that you're given in the market. And that's a good way to always be updated in that. And then I also think that still working, like, still looking for other jobs, like, in constantly being aware of what else is out there, it also keeps businesses on their A game. In the sense that high performing talents are made for high performing businesses. And businesses do not keep motivated the people they need unless they're willing to invest in their growth. Which means that unless you're willing to pay for a good asset, you're going to get stuck there. And then businesses will also get comfortable and will not excel in their growth because they're reluctant to invest. So again, competitive businesses require competitive talents. And a competitive business will always be expecting and will actually encourage you to seek those improvements in your salary by constantly demonstrating the worth that you bring and seeking those conversations. Lastly, I would say, like, you have to understand that you have to view negotiation, like you said before, as an act of good sportsmanship aimed at reaching a mutual beneficial agreement. Again, it's not meant to be a fight. It's not meant to be a dispute. And unless businesses are on a very tight budget, they usually are open to negotiate. So you really need to take that into advantage. I think that brings us to another topic, which is, like, negotiating after being hired, which I also think it's, like, a big thing. Like, once you're hired, you also don't want to negotiate. Even if time has passed, even if you have taken on more work, if your performance has improved, like, people are still reluctant to negotiate on, an increase. So Jess, why do you think employees often hesitate to renegotiate their salaries even after working on a company for a while?
I think there are 6 important topics. The first one will be fear of perception. Sometimes employees often worry that asking for a raise might be perceived as dissatisfaction with their job or could harm their relationship with their boss. And that's not true. As we were talking during this whole conversation, it's part of the process of growing, and it's part of the world. Like the world, it's getting more expensive. So I think we need it. And there's a concern about bringing up salary that could make them seem ungrateful or pushy. Sometimes this is the fear of perception, I think, which is really important. Also, our second topic would be self-doubt. Many employees doubt whether if they're done enough to deserve a raise, or they might feel that their contributions are not significant or enough, that they haven't met their expectations. It's like sometimes you ask yourself when it's a great time to ask for a raise. So I think that self-doubt, it's kind of making you think more than you should if you shouldn't do it. And also that brings another topic, which is lack of confidence. Negotiating salary requires confidence, which many of employees lack due to fear of rejection or confrontation. That could be a really important aspect too, that they might be uncertain about how to articulate their value and achievements effectively. And it's part of communication. It's just you have to learn how to communicate without having this lack of confidence. Also, an important aspect that I think it's company culture. In some company cultures, discussing this, just talking about salary openly, it's still a taboo, making employees hesitant just to bring it up. There just might be a lack of clear guidance or encouragement from management for salary reviews, which it's okay. I mean, we're in the process. Not every company culture is perfect and everything, but it's important for us to know that there is a possibility of getting a raise.
Yeah, and to acknowledge that reality.
Yeah. And it's like we were saying, everything is getting more expensive. Like, why should you not be asking for getting paid more? And also, there are also two things that I think that are really important. That uncertainty about timing, about what we were talking about. Employees might not know the right time to ask for a raise, fearing that they might choose an important moment. They might be unsure if the company is in a financial position to offer raises, especially in uncertain economic times. Like we were talking, like we don't know when is the right time to do it. If I should talk first with the boss, with management team, with human resources, like the process of doing that, it's really,
Especially like you say, if there isn't like a clear guideline or
yeah.
a process to do so, then you feel more uncertain. Like, is it the right moment? Should I wait for now? Like, if you don't have like periodic reviews, it's also harder.
And I think that the last topic, sorry, it's assumption of automatic reviews. Sometimes employees assume that if they're deserving, the company will automatically review and just adjust their salary. They might wait for the employer to take that initiative, which doesn't always happen.
Yeah, you need to champion for yourself. You're your biggest promoter.
I agree. I agree. And if you're not going to do it, who else will? But well, I think those are the six things that I had on my mind. And Gabby, to close off today's topic of conversation, what would you recommend to employees on how to bring up the topic of salary increase with their current employer, especially if they have been with the company for a long time? And also what this long time will look like. Like, what is a long time or a short time for you?
Yeah. Well, again, and I'll base it on my experience. It can be as short as if you are onboarded and quickly you understand that the amount of responsibilities doesn't align with the amount of activities that they initially mentioned that there would be, or with the job profile that they showed you, then that's where a first conversation about salary needs to come in. Because again, I'm doing more than what you asked. Let's be honest. Maybe this deserves to be acknowledged through my pay rate.
Yes.
So even it can be as short as that. Like if you started off and then you quickly notice that you're giving more responsibilities, then it makes sense to have that conversation. But if you're actually being consistent in your delivery, because it can get to a point where you are high performing because you already figured out the job dynamic and you're comfortable with that, and you're maybe having other opportunities elsewhere, you're receiving benefits like education, but still, like we talked about before, there is inflation. Maybe, periodically still talking about it makes sense, like at least once a year. I think it makes sense to at least talk about your salary once a year. Because like you say, inflation, whatever you could buy last year with your income, you can't buy the same amount of things with that same amount of money. So that's just another reason why it makes sense. And again, a lot of businesses that are like service or product based, they also increase the costs of the prices of their services and products on a regular basis. So if they increase the price on their products and they're, responsible about that, then you should also be entitled to a raise, like if you need it at least once a year.
And I also think that a great topic would be for another episode. I remember I was in Wynwood in a museum, and it was like, I don't remember the name of it, but it was about women in nowadays, like how much more they have to pay just for everything that we need. That would be a really interesting topic to talk about.
How is that? The pink law about how women pay more for
Yes.
their things, for their products, just because they're female branded.
Yes. We should definitely talk about it.
That's a good reason why women should be paid more
Yeah.
than men, if you ask me.
Yeah. I think
I
we
mean,
can
our
discuss
products are
about it.
pricier, even
Yeah.
if they're the same.
We can discuss about
But
it.
it is true. That is a great conversation topic.
Yeah.
I do want to go back to what you asked me, which is like, what are the strategies? Because I only answered half of that question.
Yeah.
Again, based on my experience, I would first establish the conversation about salary as a regular topic of conversation and constantly related to the value of what I'm contributing to my workplace. So again, like you say, a lot of company cultures, they have stigmatized this conversation. They don't have channels to talk about it. But if you know that that's an important issue for you, you need to be able to be comfortable to vocalize it. So even if it's, I don't know, sometimes it will depend because sometimes the manager has nothing to do with the pay rate. But if you know that that's a regular conversation you want to be having, you need to be seeking out that conversation so that when it comes up, it's not a surprise.
Yeah.
Okay. Understand the regular salary reviews and consider that they're common and often expected in many industries, even if the business that you are part of doesn't have it, because they may be a startup, because maybe it's too soon, because maybe they don't want to give raises, maybe they don't care about rotation. But again, if you notice that quickly that's not their thing and that they are avoidant to it, then it just means that it's not the right place for you. So that's a good sign. You're never going to get a bad answer, honestly, if you ask me about, having this conversation about salary as a constant. And then document all your contributions. And again, like you keep a detailed record of your achievements and how you've contributed to the company's success. Like highlight specific projects, improvements, or results you've delivered. Because again, if there are periodic reviews, they're looking at exactly that. So that is like the perfect context to talk about salary. But if they don't do that, because again, they may be a startup, they may not be, well seasoned, or they may not be looking towards this conversation of performance and therefore salary, you keep that registry for yourself. You keep that record. So you know what you're doing, you know the worth of it, and then you're able to use it as a token of negotiation. And then of course, prepare your pitch. Like I said before, practice, build a strong case by comparing your salary to industry standards and benchmarks, and present that data showing how your role and your responsibilities have evolved over time. Something that relates to the first thing that I was talking about is maintaining open communication about your expectations. Again, not only financial salary, but actually emotional salary. Those benefits that you're seeking upon, above the rate, the invoice that you receive each month. Foster open communication with your manager about your career growth. That's very important, because if you see that your career growth is stuck, or that you're looking to grow, or that you've actually advanced in your career and that you're more professional now and that you're more skilled now, then that's also a good angle to base your argumentation on why I am worth more now than I was before. And schedule specific meetings to discuss your performance and your compensation. Like every time that you get good feedback, well, not every time because maybe it can get tiresome, but do it periodically if your manager is not seeking it out themselves periodically. Talk about, hey, you did all this great work, and then you're like, okay, so how does that translate into my compensation? Because you're telling me about all the great things I did, so what does that add up to? And again, it can be a fuzzy conversation, specifically if it's new, if it's not regular for you to have, if you're new to it, or if the business that you are working in is new to. But the whole difference is made by the disposition of both parties to have that conversation and to be flexible. So seek feedback. I would also say that's very important. Seek feedback about the amazing things that you do, but also about the things that you need to improve. Because those are the points that you can use later. Like, hey, you told me to improve this, this, and this.
Yeah.
And I did that. And I even excelled in other things. And these are the other things that based on that feedback, I noticed that I needed to improve too. And I improved those too. So if I improved on this and I improved on that and I was proactive in this, that also I think is worthy of a compensation.
Yeah.
So it's all about creating just like this great context for you to like have all the basis and all the arguments that you need to make a strong case. And then lastly, all of that needs to be like wrapped around a beautiful amount of confidence. Like you need to be confident that what you're doing and the value that you're providing makes it worth a higher compensation. Like practice your negotiation pitch with a mentor or a peer or a friend and approach the conversation as a discussion about mutual growth rather than a confrontation. Like, hey, it benefits us both that I am happy with the work that I'm doing and that I am excelling in the work that I'm doing. And I think that's an easier conversation to have than, hey, you know what? This is my worth. Pay me. I mean, like, of course he always wants to say that, but like it needs to be a little bit more diplomatic in that sense. I think there's a little space to generally take the negative outcome. Like if you're not comfortable with what you're earning and your company is willing to listen and get to a middle ground there, it's another win-win. And if you bring up the conversation and despite having a strong case, you're shut down, you have a clear answer regarding if it's the right place for you or not. And like I said before, and I repeat it, I read this once and it stuck with me. At every job, you should either learn or earn. Either is fine. Both is best. But if it's neither, quit.
And
you have nothing to do there.
Definitely. Thank you so much, guys. Of course, we always want to hear from you. We just posted on Hiram Ola's LinkedIn account a poll. Have you ever negotiated your salary? We want to see what your answers are. And if so, we would like to read your comments on that post about your first time negotiating your salary during interviews or an established job.
Yeah, first times are hard for everyone. I think that understanding it's just a part of the process to perfect your technique, and confidence in that area is a huge help. So yeah, so if you have any scary stories to tell, like any cringy
Please.
stories to tell, even that's great because it means that we're not alone. and that it'll usually be a scary conversation to have. And you can let us know how you overcame your fear of negotiating. Like, we would love to read your answers.
Absolutely, Gabby. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for this episode. I love that, by the way. And I know you guys will. And just thanks for tuning in.
Remember to subscribe for more on remote work, career growth, and personal development. This is Gabby.
And this is Jess. See you next time.
That wraps another episode of the Hired Hub podcast. We hope you found today's discussion empowering and insightful. Remember, success in the world of remote work is within your reach, and we're here to support you every step of the way.
Be sure to subscribe to our podcast for more expert advice and engaging conversations. Please give us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify to help us reach more people who can benefit from the Hired Hub podcast.